Hello everyone, this is a channel about engines. Today we will disassemble this engine. This is a Mercedes OM 442 which has 8 cylinders. This engine was installed on a Setra 315 bus. The malfunction of this engine is that the antifreeze gets into the oil. Very often this happens on similar engines with high mileage. A little history of this engine. This bus was bought in Germany. In Russia this engine has never been repaired, I mean a complete overhaul to completely disassemble it by bolt. 2 years ago, the sump was removed and the oil pump was replaced. The old pump had low oil pressure. The fuel pump was also removed and repaired. It was about 1 year ago. That's what was being repaired, but this engine has not yet been completely disassembled in Russia. Now it will be very interesting for me to see what state he is in. This is the simplest engine, without a turbine. My favorite engine, simple and reliable. According to the owner of this bus, the engine works fine, the oil pressure was almost good, the fuel consumption was good, but since antifreeze began to get into the oil, it was decided to completely disassemble this engine and repair it. So what do we expect to see inside this engine? We expect to see large wear of parts, uniform wear of parts. There should not be any critical breakdowns. I think it will be so. But let's not guess. Now we will disassemble the engine and see everything. This engine traveled 1 million kilometers on a bus in Russia. How much it traveled in Germany, no one knows. But I think that there are also many kilometers. It is clear that this bus was bought not from the assembly line, but after a long period of work. This is the first series, then there will be series for assembling this engine, there will be a series for starting this engine on the table, there will be a series for painting this engine. There will be 4 episodes about this engine in total. In this series, I will disassemble this engine and see the condition of the piston rings, liners, bushings, liners, pistons, and so on. The engine was dirty. I washed it at the car wash. As much as possible, he washed out the dirt from hard-to-reach places, from under the high-pressure fuel pump, in the attachment points of the injectors, and so on. Now we begin to disassemble the engine. First removes the tubes, manifolds, valve covers and everything else. Go. We see that there is oil in the collector, but there is no dust or dirt there. This is very good. We immediately see signs of the presence of antifreeze in the oil. Here you can see the emulsion on the walls of the valve cover. There is no doubt that this engine has antifreeze in the oil. This is 100%. We see that there is a backlash on the axis of the rocker arms, but this can be seen on almost all engines of this model when they have high mileage. Visually we look at the springs, like all are intact. Now we look at the rocker and it's amazing how good it is, how smooth everything is, it's fantastic. We see on this lid there are also traces of emulsion. This is due to antifreeze in oil. Then I will remove the high-pressure fuel pump, but first I will display the marks and see how many degrees the ignition was set. We see that the movable mark and the fixed mark coincided. In this position I see how many degrees there are on the flywheel. I put a point as usual, and after removing the flywheel I will see how many degrees there were. Then I will remove the cylinder head. Took off the cylinder heads and we see that the pistons have a diameter of 130 mm. We see that on the first cylinder there is a gasket with copper seals, and on all other cylinders with rubber seals. This means that the first head was removed, maybe even in Germany, or maybe already in Russia, but it doesn't really matter. We look at other gaskets and see that they have a Mercedes badge and a catalog number. In my opinion, I have never seen such gasket, original in the sense. The other 7 gaskets are like that. I think that these are gaskets from the factory, and this means that no one has completely disassembled the engine except me. Then we look at the condition of the cylinder heads. We see that the coolant channel on one head, also on the second head, has slightly corroded, but this is not critical. With good gaskets these cylinder heads will still work well. The coolant channel should be approximately this shape. The first impression is that everything is fine with the cylinder heads, but of course we will disassemble them, wash them, watch them. We see that on the head where there was a gasket with rubber rings, the contact plane was in very good condition. And on the head where there was a gasket with copper rings, there was a contact plane with very strong corrosion. Therefore, you cannot install metal cylinder head gaskets with copper rings, only with rubber rings, otherwise you will ruin both the cylinder head and the cylinder block itself. Then we look at the wear on the cylinder. We see that the wear is large, it is felt well to the touch and is caught with a fingernail. This can mean only one thing: that the cylinders will definitely be thrown away. This can be understood even without using measuring instruments. We also see that the same pistons are installed everywhere, except for the first cylinder. It was on it that a different gasket was installed. On the first cylinder the piston is different. Perhaps it has already been changed, but we'll see that when we disassemble the engine. Then I remove the fuel pump, remove the fittings and turn the engine over. I remove the head from the compressor so as not to break it when I turn the engine over. Now you can turn it over. The engine oil has already been drained. I turn the engine over and now I remove the pallet. Took off the pallet and we see that everything is fine. There are no shavings, there are no fragments. Then I remove the oil pump. Then I remove the oil filter. I unscrew the side bolts that hold the main covers, and then remove the flywheel. We look at the compressor, it seems so far so good, but then we will disassemble and watch it. We see that the compressor drive gear is in good condition. Perhaps the cylinder was changed once, and I will not change it. Maybe I will just change the piston rings. We see that the timing marks coincided. There are two numbers, one on the camshaft, a dot on the crankshaft. The shaft turns tight. This indicates a lot of wear on the liners. Then I unscrew all the bolts securing the main caps and connecting rods. I made an emphasis for the engine so that it does not turn. I unscrewed all the bolts of the main caps and connecting rod, and now we will look at the inserts. It is interesting to see what size, what year of manufacture, what condition. We look and see what we expected to see, namely, uniform wear, no strong seams or scratches, only strong uniform wear. In some places, peeling of the base of the anti-friction layer is observed. We see that the size of the inserts is standard. We see the Mercedes icon and we see the date of the release of these inserts in 1989. Now let's see the release date on others. Is it really this 1989 engine? Blimey. What wear is there? I have not seen such inserts for a long time. We see that nothing remained of the anti-friction layer, it was completely worn off. And in this place the whole base of the anti-friction layer peeled off. It already looks like 1989. Now let's see the year of release of this insert. Judging by the state, we can safely say that this is 1989. We also see that the insert has a year of release 1989. Later I will shoot with another camera, on which the focus will be better, and insert frames, so you can see for yourself the year of manufacture of these inserts. I know for sure that this bus covered 1 million kilometers in Russia, but I do not know how long it traveled in Germany. In Russia in 6 years 1 million, then in Germany in 22 years how much? 1 more million, or 2 million, or 3 million. Write in the comments what you think about this. What is the approximate total mileage of this engine? Now I will remove the connecting rod cover and see what kind of inserts there are. What condition and year of manufacture. Connecting rod inserts look much better, but then let's see more inserts in the connecting rod itself. It usually wears out more. Now we are interested in what year these inserts were produced. We see the Mercedes icon. It means there are also original inserts. We see the year of manufacture 1991. So far we do not draw any conclusions. We will draw conclusions when we completely analyze the engine and see everything. Now I put the engine on its side and I will remove the first, second, third and fourth pistons. Before getting the pistons, I need to clean this carbon deposit. Piston rings pass through it poorly. The condition of this piston is good. The piston rings are also in good condition. We see that this insert is produced in 1992. I just called the owner of the bus and he told me that the bus was produced in 1992. So the engine is also produced in 1992. Some inserts were produced in 1989, some in 1992. It does not immediately come from the assembly line to the assembly plant. On the sixth piston we see a broken oil scraper ring. I took out the piston and it fell out. We see that all the inserts are in about the same condition. There is no such wear on the connecting rod inserts as on the main ones, but there are small seizures and scratches. This is not critical, and I think that there should be no problems with the crankshaft. The inserts that stand in the connecting rod cover have a year of manufacture, 1991. And the inserts that stand in the connecting rod are manufactured in 1992. We also see the Mercedes icon on all inserts. I removed the piston and now I will remove the crankshaft. Took off the crankshaft and watch it. Visually there are small defects. It will be necessary to work with it. Later, I will install it on the machine and sand it with fine sandpaper. Then, I will take measurements of the necks in order to understand whether it is in size or not. Now remove the camshaft. There are small questions on the camshaft, but since the owner of the engine had no complaints about the power of this engine, about fuel consumption, and given that this is still an original camshaft, we will leave it. Then, I will take off the cylinders, since they are no longer needed and this is scrap metal. Then I will not regret them and just knock them out. Then I remove the liners, pushes and rubber bands from under the cylinders. Took out the pusher and we see that it has wear. The pushers are in a very bad condition and we will definitely change them all. We will install new pushers. Look at the condition of the rubber bands. They are still soft but have already lost their shape and have become rectangular in cross-section. Now let's summarize the results of this engine. The general condition of the engine is very good. Even in spite of such a large wear on the main bearings, this wear is good. Uniform high wear from high mileage. Nothing is eternal, and over time even very good parts wear out. What will I change exactly on this engine? There will be a replacement of pushers, replacement of camshaft bushings, replacement of main and connecting rod bearings, replacement of cylinders. Piston rings and sealing rubber bands under the cylinders is 100%. Perhaps there will be new pistons, but this decision has not yet been made. We will not do anything about the fuel equipment because the high-pressure fuel pump and injectors were recently repaired. I will wash and blow it all and put it back on the engine. We also leave the crankshaft and camshaft. They are in good condition and besides they are original. The bushings on the connecting rods will be replaced, since these have a backlash. New bushings will be machined on the machine to fit the size of the piston pin. The cylinder heads will need to be washed and disassembled. Then take them to a surface grinder and grind the plane of contact with the block. And then there will be a repair of the cylinder heads. This is lapping valves, replacing valve stem seals and so on. What have I already done with this engine? I washed it first in diesel fuel, then in a jet-type car wash with powder, soda and engine cleaner. Then I blew it with compressed air and now it looks like this. Now I will clean the cylinder block from old gaskets, old sealant, rust and old flaking paint. This is necessary for further painting. I will work with attachments for an angle grinder, attachments for a drill. I have a sandblaster, but there is no way to use it yet, as there is a lot of preparatory work to be done. It is necessary to make plugs for all seats so that the sand does not spoil them. I will do all this in the future, but now there is no time for that. I prepare the block, and then I will wash all the other parts, connecting rods, pistons, covers, and so on. I washed some details and will now show how it was. For protection I use a respirator and a protective mask. I cleaned the cylinder block and wiped it with a rag and solvent. This is how it looks now. What's my next challenge? Next, I will prepare the screw thread. The cylinder block is fully prepared for assembly. We begin to assemble the engine. The first thing we will supply is a heat exchanger. We see that I removed the radiator, washed it, blew it with compressed air, and now I will install it in its place. I smear the sealant on the heat exchanger body, smear the sealant on the block. I take the gasket and install the heat exchanger. Installed a heat exchanger. I tightened the mounting bolts and again checked the tightness of the radiator mounting bolts. Also checked the tightening torque of the oil nozzles. And checked the tightening torque of the oil channel plugs. Now I will install the camshaft bushings. I check that the bushings are of a standard size, and not a repair one. Now I align the hole in the oil channel and hammer in the bushing. I hammered the camshaft bushings into the block. Now I check the oil channels. On the first bushing, we see a channel through which oil flows to the high-pressure fuel pump. And we look at the second oil channel. We see it also coincided. Oil flows through it to the camshaft. I hammered the camshaft bushings into the block. Now I turn the block over and install the cylinders. I install the cylinders from OE, and the elastic bands under the cylinders of L-ring are the best rubber bands in my opinion. We will install the old pistons. They have small scratches. But the owner of the bus did not want to buy new ones. But these pistons will still work. Now I will measure the height of the cylinder seat. It should be 9.92 millimeters. I will also measure the thickness of the adjusting rings. Their thickness should be 0.15 millimeters. Then, I will measure the protrusion of the cylinder above the block. Cylinder 9.92 millimeters. Ring 0.15 millimeters. Now I measure all cylinders and all rings. Installed all the cylinders without rubber bands, and now I will clamp each cylinder and measure the protrusion of the cylinder above the block. We clamp the cylinder, adjust the dial indicator and look. We see that we have block 0, and when we start it on the cylinder, the arrow shows 0.08 of a millimeter. 0, 8. And so we check in 3 planes. I have already checked this cylinder. The protrusion of this cylinder above the block is 0.08 millimeters. This is the norm. I will show that if you measure an unclamped cylinder, the arrow shows 0.13 of a millimeter. clamp the second cylinder. We measure. Block is 0, cylinder is 9 acres. In the second plane, we look, the block is 0, 9, 0, 9. In the third plane we look, 0, 9, 0, 9. This cylinder has a 0.09 mm protrusion above the block. I checked the rest of the cylinders in the same way. I checked all the cylinders. All the protrusions are 0.08 or 0.09 millimeters. It is very good. Now I take out the cylinders, place them in order. I will not confuse them in places. I install new rubber bands and put the cylinders back into the block. Installed the rubber bands in the block and installed the rubber bands on the cylinders. Now I lubricate everything with a special assembly paste and install the cylinders. I installed all the cylinders. Now I will turn the block over and install the crankshaft. Before I install it, I need to prepare it. Now I will clamp it in the machine, remove the counterweights and polish the crankshaft. The shaft has been polished, now it looks like this. I measure the connecting rod journals, the diameter is 89.99 millimeters. And all crankshaft connecting rod journals are of this size. Now we measure the main journals of the crankshaft. We see a diameter of 103.98 millimeters. All are of this size. Our crankshaft is in very good condition. I also removed the thrust ring under the oil seal. Later I will install a new one. This is how the shaft arrived and laid down in one shot, and now I go back a little and show what else I was doing with the shaft.
Before installing the crankshaft, it is necessary to install the tappet, then it will be inconvenient to install them. We use old tappet, but they are in excellent condition. I oiled everything and install the tappet. I installed the crankshaft. I have not fully tightened it yet, only with a pneumatic pistol. The shaft turns very well, very smoothly. I also want to remind you that this crankshaft was made in 1990. It is already 30 years old, but it is in perfect condition. Just unbelievable. After 30 years of operation and several million kilometers, it has a standard size. Only in Russia this shaft drove 1 million kilometers. How many in Germany is unknown. Now I will tighten the main bolts and install the side bolts. The crankshaft is now fully tightened. Main bolts and side bolts are tightened. This is how it spins now. Rotates gently. I can feel the oil holding it. Everything is fine. Now I measure the longitudinal movement of the crankshaft. The maximum allowable value is 0.15 millimeters. I take the 0.15 probe and insert it and see that the shaft has stopped moving. This means that the longitudinal movement of the shaft is 0.15 millimeters. This is within the normal range. All is well. Now I will install the camshaft and will deal with the pistons. We combine the labels of the gas distribution mechanism. There is a mark on the crankshaft, 2 units on the camshaft. Altogether it rotates like this. I immediately install the plug. I will anoint with such glue. Now I will deal with pistons and connecting rods. Here I have the pistons. I took them off the connecting rods, washed them and put them in the box, but I haven't cleaned the carbon deposits yet. And here I have connecting rods. They were given to replace the bushings and bore the bushings. I have not looked at them yet. Now I will unpack them and see how they were repaired. I put the connecting rods and pistons by numbers, checked how the finger enters the bushing, everything turned out fine. Now I am assembling the piston, connecting rod, and then I will clean the grooves for the piston rings from carbon deposits. Now I need to clean the carbon deposits from the grooves. I will do this with an old ring. I broke it, sharpened it a little on emery, and like this I remove carbon deposits. I prepared the piston. Now I will install the rings. One piston is ready. I cook the other 7 in the same way. Cleaned all pistons and fitted all rings. I will now install the rod bearings. Then I will install the pistons in the cylinders. The crankshaft is fully tightened, the pistons are installed, and now the engine rotates like this. Now I will be installing counterweights. They have been washed and cleaned. The bolts will sit on the thread lock. Counterweights installed and tightened. Now install the front and back covers. I washed the front cover, cleaned it, changed the oil seal and cleaned the thread. I did the same with the back cover. There was also a compressor repair. The compressor was repaired not so long ago, so I left the old cylinder, the old crankshaft and the old bearing. Put new piston rings, bearings and rear crankshaft bushing. I installed the back and front covers and tightened the bolt. I will now install the flywheel and coolant pipe to the compressor. The flywheel remains old. The bearing in the flywheel has installed a new one. I tightened the flywheel. Made marks. 0 is top dead center and 14 is a mark for installing a high-pressure fuel pump. Now I will also install these brackets and then I will install the oil pump and sump. I installed the pallet and tightened it, then I will install the cylinder heads. I gave the heads to a surface grinding machine. They were perfectly made and now they look like this. Now I will repair the heads. I washed them again after the machine and blew the heads with compressed air. Removed all the chips and abrasive in this way. Now I look at the condition of the seats and valves. I have already cleaned the valves of carbon deposits and see that they need to be machined on the machine. The guide sleeves are in good condition. I won't do anything with them. Now let's take a closer look at the valve. You can see in what poor condition its working plane. Now we look at how the valves look before processing on the machine. The valves are ready. Now I will deal with the valve seat. I will not touch the working plane, but I will just make it much narrower. One valve is ready. We look at the working plane and see a good and clear imprint from the valve seat. We also see a characteristic shine on the valve. Now we look at the valve seat itself and also see the clear boundaries of the working area, which also has a characteristic shine without interruption. Valves on this head are ready. Now I will put new valve stem seals and assemble the head. The cylinder heads are all made and ready to be installed on the engine. I put all the new valve stem seals, put all the springs, cleaned the nozzle seat, cleaned the threads, prepared the cylinder head bolts, prepared the guide bushings. Now I print the gaskets and install the cylinder head. See the instructions for installing the gasket. We see that we have Type C bolts. We see that we need to tighten it in 5 approaches. First 10, then 50, then 100, then 150, then 190 Newton meters. And then up to 90 degrees. Take the torque wrench and tighten the bolts. Cylinder heads are tightened. Now I'm setting up a rocker. Now I will adjust the valves. For this I need to bring the piston of the first cylinder to top dead center. I turn the engine clockwise until the inlet valve is triggered. After which I bring the piston to top dead center. This will be a compression stroke. For convenience, I made these marks on the flywheel. Now label 0 should come out right here. Half of the valves can now be adjusted. Which valves can be adjusted? Indicated in this table. Using the example of the first cylinder, I will show how to adjust the valves. I make a clearance of 0.5 mm for both valves. I adjusted all the valves. Now I will put such a mark on the camshaft. It means that the piston of the first cylinder is at top dead center in the compression stroke. You can navigate by this mark when installing a high-pressure fuel pump. Now I install a high-pressure fuel pump. For this I put a mark of 14 degrees on the flywheel. I also put a mark on the pump itself, put new O-rings and install a high-pressure fuel pump. The high-pressure fuel pump is installed. Let me remind you that nothing was done with it this time. I just washed it and put it in its place. They also did not do anything with the injectors this time, since the fuel equipment was being repaired about a year ago. Now I will also check the tightness of the adjusting bolts. I did not unscrew them, but I will just check. I will also immediately install the cover that covers the gears, install the compressor cylinder head and install the rest of the small parts. Now I will install the nozzles. I will use new copper sealing washers, new nuts for fastening the nozzles, and I will lubricate the nuts themselves with such a ceramic paste. Very good paste. Works up to 1200 degrees Celsius. I installed the nozzles and now I am installing the return hose. Almost everything is ready. It remains to install the valve covers, air manifold and fuel pipes. This is what I will do now. The engine is fully assembled. In what configuration it was brought to me in this way it is now. There were no exhaust manifolds on it. Then I will prepare this engine for launch. I want to have it on this table. Now I will fill in the oil, install my water pump as a plug so that I can fill the engine with water, connect the throttle cable, connect the fuel hoses and install the starter. Now I will do this.
I connected the batteries and starter. I also connected the fuel pipes and hoses to supply fuel to the pump. I installed a water pump, made a plug in this place, and also filled the engine with water. I also put oil in the sump. Now I will bleed the system to remove possible dirt, so the return line goes to a separate container for now. There is practically no dirt, there is almost clean fuel, so I make a return line to the common tank. Added more fuel to a full tank and now I will pump the fuel system. We see that there is no air left in the fuel system. Also connected a gas cable, put a spring for return. You can try to start the engine. I made a stopper from a rag on the bottle so that fuel would not pour out from vibration. Installed a mechanical oil pressure sensor, we will control. Go! I still need to pump fuel. I don't like how the check valve works. It may be faulty. engine worked for some time, during which time approximately 600–700 grams of fuel were consumed. The engine warmed up to a temperature of 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. I will not start the engine again. The engine runs fine. Oil pressure is good, runs smoothly, no vibration. The engine practically does not smoke. After running it will be even better. Next I will prepare the engine for painting. I removed everything that was installed on the engine for the first start. Already prepared the engine for painting, installed plugs in different places, for example, at the starter attachment point. At the gearbox attachment point, glued masking tape somewhere, on the air manifold, on the air supply to the compressor, and so on. I'll start painting next. I have an acrylic primer, applied directly to the metal. I already diluted the primer in the right proportions. I think that this should be enough. After priming, I will apply this paint. I think you can start painting. I applied a primer to the engine. It has already dried up a little. The engine is still warm, probably 30 degrees Celsius. Already prepared the paint, mixed in the right proportions. The paint is this color, different from the native color, but I think there is not much difference for painting the engine. The main thing is to protect the engine from corrosion and so on. I really want the engine to look good. By the way, write in the comments which color is better. I painted the engine. This is the result. I'm happy. This is how the video turned out. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone. Bye everyone.